Hey, you're watching Confession Multiverse, the channel where we bring you the most unforgettable confessions, straight from the people who lived them. The room was dressed in pastel pinks and soft whites, balloons floating lazily against the ceiling, ribbons curling down like delicate vines. Laughter filled the air, spilling over the clinking of glasses and the rustle of gift wrap being torn open. Someone snapped photos, capturing what everyone else saw as pure joy, the perfect celebration of new life. She stood in the center, her hands resting on her belly, her glow undeniable. Family crowded around her, friends shouted blessings, and the whole room seemed to orbit her like she was the sun. And for a brief moment, I almost believed the illusion. I almost let myself drown in the picture-perfect scene. But then her eyes found mine. Just for a second. Just long enough for a smile to bloom across her lips. It was the kind of smile that could convince the world everything was fine. To anyone else, it was a sign of love, gratitude, happiness. To me, it was a knife, a cruel reminder of a truth I had pieced together in silence. My chest tightened as the crowd clapped, as the music swelled, as everyone around me cheered for a future they believed belonged to us. But deep inside, I knew what no one else dared to imagine. The baby she carried wasn't mine. I met her on a day I wasn't even looking for love. Isn't that how these things usually happen? I was at a friend's birthday dinner, sitting at the far end of a crowded table, half listening to conversations that didn't matter to me. Then she walked in. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to claim attention. She just had this presence, calm but magnetic. Her laughter cut through the noise like a melody I hadn't heard before, but instantly recognized. When she finally sat near me, our eyes met for the first time, and it felt like the rest of the room had blurred away. Our conversation started awkwardly. Small talk about mutual friends, the food, the weather. But somewhere between "pass me the salt" and "what do you do?" something shifted. I found myself leaning in, forgetting the party, forgetting everything but her. The next day, I told myself not to overthink it, but then she texted me first. "It was nice talking to you yesterday." 5 words, but they changed my entire week. We started meeting up for coffee, then dinners, then long walks at night. She had this way of making ordinary moments feel cinematic. Even sharing fries in a car at midnight felt like a scene worth remembering. Soon I was hooked. She wasn't just someone I dated. She became the person I woke up excited to talk to, the one I thought about when planning my future. When she laughed, I felt accomplished, like I'd won something. When she leaned her head on my shoulder, I felt like I'd found home. We weren't perfect, no couple is, but in those early months, it felt close. She'd send me good morning texts before I opened my eyes and late night calls that lasted until we both fell asleep. She introduced me to her family earlier than I expected, and her mom smiled at me like I was already part of the picture. I remember sitting in her living room, eating dinner with her parents, thinking, this is it. This is the start of forever. We made promises to travel, to buy a house, to name our kids after people we admired. We'd talk about wedding songs, about which side of the bed each of us liked, about silly little traditions we wanted to create. And I believed every word. The little things mattered the most. The way she'd leave notes in my bag when I had a busy day. The way she'd grab my hand when crossing the street. The way she'd send me memes that made no sense to anyone else, but had us laughing until we cried. All of it built this unshakable foundation in my mind. I thought I can trust her with anything, with my life, with my dreams, with my heart. And maybe that's why I didn't notice the cracks at first. They were so small, so easy to dismiss. A missed call here, an unanswered text there, an excuse about being tired, about needing space, about hanging out with just friends I'd never heard of. At the time, I brushed it off. Everyone gets busy, right? Everyone needs their own world outside the relationship. But sometimes her stories didn't line up. She'd say she was with a friend, but I'd catch a pause in her tone, like she was rehearsing her words. She'd cancel a plan last minute, but post a smiling photo later from somewhere else. I noticed these things, but I buried them, because when she was with me, she was present, affectionate, loving. When she laughed with me, it drowned out the doubts. When she kissed me, it erased my questions. And so I convinced myself I was imagining it, that every couple has off days, that love means trust, even when the pieces don't fit perfectly. Looking back now, I realize those tiny cracks were the beginning of a story I wasn't ready to face. But in that moment, I was blind. Willingly blind. Because when you love someone that deeply, sometimes you'd rather not see the truth at all. It didn't happen all at once. That's the worst part. If betrayal came like a lightning strike, sharp and sudden, maybe it would hurt less. But with her, the change came slowly, like a dimmer switch turning down the light on everything we once had. At first, it was the little things. A delayed reply to a text. A call cut short because she was tired. I didn't think much of it. We were both busy, I told myself. Life was catching up. Work stress, family obligations. It was normal. But soon the patterns grew harder to ignore. She started canceling plans we'd set days in advance. Sometimes she'd call me an hour before we were supposed to meet and say she wasn't feeling well. Other times she'd simply text, "Something came up, I'll explain later." Later never came. I tried to be understanding. I told myself love meant patience. But then I noticed how her excuses became strangely repetitive, almost rehearsed. The same words, the same tone, as if she'd practiced them. There were nights she claimed to be working late, yet her social media told a different story. Tagged at a bar, laughing with people I didn't know, faces I'd never been introduced to. When I asked, she brushed it off. "Oh, it was last minute. Just friends from work." I didn't think it mattered. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe so badly that I swallowed the unease in my chest and forced a smile. But the feeling lingered, heavy and constant, like a weight pressing down on me. Then came the phone call she'd taken another room. Before, she used to laugh on speaker while I sat beside her. Now she stepped away, lowered her voice, came back with half-hearted explanations. "Just my cousin, nothing important." I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself trust was stronger than doubt. But at night, lying awake beside her, I couldn't shake the sound of that hushed laughter, the way her eyes avoided mine afterward. There were other signs. She started dressing differently, putting more effort into her appearance on days she said she was just running errands. Her perfume lingered stronger when she came home late. And sometimes when I hugged her, it felt like she stiffened for a second before melting into me, like she had to remind herself to play the part. I remember one evening in particular. We had plans to watch a movie at my place. I'd set everything up. Her favorite snacks, blankets on the couch, a film she'd been wanting to see. She texted last minute, "Sorry, can't make it tonight. Work emergency." I sighed, disappointed but understanding. Until hours later, scrolling through my feed, I saw her tagged in a photo at a rooftop lounge, glass in hand, laughing under string lights. Not a trace of stress on her face. My stomach dropped. I wanted to call her out right then, to demand an explanation, but instead I closed the app and stared at the ceiling. Because here's the thing, sometimes it's easier to live with lies than to face the truth head on. I told myself she deserved her freedom, that maybe she just needed space, that maybe I was being clingy, insecure. I buried my doubts because I didn't want to be that partner, the paranoid, controlling one. And yet, every time she brushed off my questions, a part of me broke a little more. I found myself oscillating between two extremes. On good days, when she laughed with me, when she kissed me, when she held my hand, I convinced myself everything was fine, that I was imagining things, that love was still intact. On bad days, when the lies piled up, when her phone lit up with messages she wouldn't explain, when she seemed miles away even while sitting right next to me, I felt the cold grip of suspicion, confusion, denial, hope, suspicion. The cycle repeated endlessly, spinning me in circles until I didn't know which way was up anymore. And through it all, I clung to the belief that this was just a rough patch, that couples go through ups and downs, that maybe she was stressed, maybe she was testing boundaries, maybe she'd come back to me fully if I just held on long enough. Because when you love someone, really love them, you'll do anything to protect the story you've written in your head, even if the chapters no longer match reality. I kept telling myself, she loves me. She wouldn't do this. We're still okay. But deep inside, a voice I tried to silence kept whispering the words I was too afraid to hear. Something isn't right, and soon you won't be able to ignore it anymore. It was a rainy evening when she told me. I remember because the sound of the rain against the window seemed to drown out everything else, like the world was trying to hush me, to force me into silence. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands folded nervously, her eyes avoiding mine. Then she said the words that would change everything. "I'm pregnant."
For a split second, my heart leapt. I felt joy surge through me, unfiltered, raw, almost childlike. This was what we'd talked about in whispers late at night. This was the dream we'd painted together. A family, a life that was ours. I wanted to run to her, hold her, thank her for carrying something that would be half me, half her. I wanted to shout it to the world. But then, like a shadow creeping across the light, doubt slithered in. Because even as I smiled, even as I said, "That's amazing," my mind started doing math. Quiet, unforgiving math. Dates, weeks. The nights she was working late. The weekends she disappeared with vague excuses. The sudden shift in her behavior months ago. Something didn't add up. I stared at her, trying to hold my joy steady, but my chest tightened. She was glowing, yes, but not in the way I'd always imagined. There was a distance in her smile, a flicker in her eyes, like she was hiding something beneath the surface. I forced myself to remember, trust her, love her. That's what I had always done. So I nodded, congratulated her, even pulled her into my arms. She cried into my shoulder, whispering how scared and happy she was. But behind my embrace, my mind was racing. And then came the flashbacks, moments I had ignored, now crashing into me like waves. The time she canceled dinner because of a work project, but I later saw a tagged photo of her at a rooftop bar. The hushed phone calls she'd taken in another room, claiming they were her cousin. The sudden perfume, the new clothes, the excuses that never felt quite real. Piece by piece, they snapped together into a picture I hadn't wanted to see. I remembered her leaving one night, saying she was meeting a friend who was going through something. I'd offered to come along, to keep her company. She had almost snapped at me before softening her tone. "No, it's better if I go alone." I let it slide back then. But now, with the news of her pregnancy, that night replayed in my head differently. The puzzle was cruel, and my heart refused to fit the pieces together. Still, I stayed silent. I smiled, I nodded, I pretended. Because how could I accuse her in that moment? How could I shatter her joy with my suspicion? We sat together for hours that night, planning like a normal couple. She spoke about names, about nursery colors, about how her parents would react, and I played along, each word I said a lie meant to cover the scream inside me. When I finally lay in bed, staring at the ceiling beside her sleeping figure, the weight of it all pressed down on me. My chest burned with betrayal, but my arms still held her because I didn't know how to let go. I didn't ask for proof. I didn't demand answers. I didn't scream, even though every fiber in me wanted to. Instead, I chose silence. Because sometimes, silence feels safer than the truth. Sometimes the thought of confirming your worst fear is more unbearable than the fear itself. And so, I convinced myself I could live in denial a little longer. That maybe I was wrong. That maybe the child really was mine. But in the deepest part of me, I already knew. The dates didn't fit. The timelines didn't match. The cracks I'd ignored had finally become an earthquake. And sitting there, smiling through clenched teeth, pretending to celebrate, I realized something that made me sick. This wasn't just the end of our love story. This was the rewriting of it. Every laugh, every kiss, every promise, now tainted by the possibility that she'd never been fully mine. The night she told me she was pregnant, I lost not just the future I'd dreamed of, but the past I'd been clinging to. And yet, I said nothing. I let her sleep soundly beside me while I lay awake, drowning in a truth I couldn't speak aloud. Sleep became a stranger to me. Nights that once ended with her head resting on my chest turned into hours of staring at the ceiling, counting cracks in the plaster, replaying her words over and over until they lost meaning. "I'm pregnant." Those two words had become a loop, a curse I couldn't turn off. Every time I closed my eyes, the timeline played in my mind like a cruel slideshow. The canceled dinners, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden distance. I tried to push it away, but the pieces were too sharp. They cut through every excuse I tried to build. During the day, I became an investigator in my own life. Not in dramatic ways. No private detectives, no hidden cameras, but in the quiet, desperate methods of a man who wants the truth but fears it at the same time. I'd check her calendar, noticing when her appointments didn't quite align with what she'd told me. I'd scroll through old messages, noticing how her tone had shifted months before. Sometimes I'd even glance at her phone when it buzzed, not daring to open it, just looking at the names that flashed on the screen. Too often, they were names I didn't recognize. One night, while she was in the shower, I found myself staring at her handbag sitting on the chair. My hands hovered over it, trembling. I wanted to look inside to find something, anything that could confirm or destroy my suspicion. But after minutes of hesitation, I stepped away. Because if I found proof, what then? Could I handle it? The worst moments were when she slipped. Little cracks in her mask that most people wouldn't notice, but I did. Like the time she mentioned going to a cafe on a day she'd sworn she was at the office. Or the night she told me she was exhausted from working late. But her perfume was stronger than ever, her makeup too fresh for someone who'd just left the office. I wanted to confront her so many times. I'd open my mouth, ready to ask the question burning inside me. Is the baby mine? But the words froze in my throat every time, because once spoken, they couldn't be taken back. And if she said no, if she confirmed my fear, then everything would shatter. So I swallowed the questions. I buried them beneath small talk, beneath forced smiles, beneath the pretense of a supportive partner. But my silence didn't silence the storm inside me. It only grew louder. I started confiding in small, indirect ways. I'd drop vague comments to a friend like, "Do you ever feel like people change on you?" Or, "Have you ever doubted someone you love?" They'd nod, offer generic advice, tell me every relationship has rough patches. No one suspected the depth of my pain because I never let them see it fully. Her family praised me constantly. "You're going to be such a great father," her mother said, hugging me tightly at a family dinner. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting, because in my mind a voice screamed, but I might not be the father at all. Even strangers got involved unknowingly. A coworker congratulated me after hearing from someone else. "Man, you must be over the moon," he said, clapping me on the back. I nodded, laughed weakly, then excused myself to the restroom, where I locked the door and stared at my reflection until my eyes blurred with tears. The world saw me as a man living his dream, when in reality, I was unraveling from the inside. Doubt became my constant companion. Some days I convinced myself I was paranoid, that the baby had to be mine, that love and trust meant pushing past these fears. On those days, I'd feel lighter, almost happy, holding her hand, imagining a future. But other days, darker days, the doubt consumed me. I'd imagine her with someone else, imagine nights I didn't know about. Imagine that smile she gave me being given to another man behind closed doors. The pendulum swung daily, paranoia to hope, hope to paranoia, and in the middle of it all, I was breaking. I started losing weight, skipping meals. My coworkers noticed I was distracted, but I brushed them off. She noticed, too, sometimes, asking if I was okay. I'd smile, kiss her forehead, and say, "Just tired." Always tired. Because how do you explain a kind of exhaustion that isn't from work, isn't from life, but from carrying a secret war inside your chest? At night, lying beside her, I'd watch her sleep, her hand resting on her stomach, the smallest smile on her lips. To anyone else, it would be a beautiful picture of love and expectation. To me, it was torture, because I didn't know if that child she carried was a symbol of our love or proof of my betrayal. And still, I stayed silent. Still, I played the part. Still, I held on to the tiny thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Because as much as the truth threatened to destroy me, not knowing somehow felt worse. The day of the baby shower arrived, bright and unforgiving. From the moment I walked in, I felt like I had stepped onto a stage where everyone else knew their lines, but I had forgotten mine. The room was decorated in shades of pastel pink and soft cream, balloons tied in clusters, ribbons curling from the ceiling. Tables overflowed with flowers, cakes, and neatly wrapped gifts. Every detail screamed joy, anticipation, new beginnings. The air itself seemed lighter, buzzing with laughter, congratulations, and the click of cameras capturing every smile. And there she was, the center of it all. She looked radiant. There's no other word for it. Her dress flowed around her, glowing under the lights. Her hair framed her face perfectly, her hands resting delicately on her rounded belly as guests circled her like planets around the sun. They touched her arm, hugged her, placed gentle hands on her stomach as if blessing the child inside. She laughed easily, soaking in the adoration. Everyone saw a mother-to-be in her element. I saw a stranger wrapped in the costume of the woman I once loved.
The applause, the toasts, the endless chatter, it all sounded muffled to me, like I was underwater. Smiling faces blurred together while my chest tightened with every passing minute. At one point, her mother called me over. "Come stand by her." "You're the proud father," she said, her eyes glowing with pride. I obeyed, moving through the crowd like a puppet pulled by strings. When I stood beside her, cameras flashed, capturing us as the perfect couple about to embark on the greatest journey of all. She leaned into me for the photos, her hand brushing mine, and for a second the old warmth flickered. For everyone else, it was a beautiful moment. For me, it was unbearable. Because while they saw love, I felt betrayal. While they celebrated a future, I mourned the truth I couldn't speak. Then it happened. Our eyes met, hers and mine, across the chaos of laughter and clinking glasses. For just a heartbeat, the room seemed to freeze. She smiled at me, soft and knowing, like she was reassuring me that everything was fine. To anyone else, it was a smile of joy. To me, it was a confession. That smile carried every unanswered question, every late night, every lie I'd swallowed. It was as if she knew I had put the pieces together, and her expression was a plea, or perhaps a challenge, daring me to say something. But I didn't. I couldn't. I felt the walls closing in, the noise of the party swelling, suffocating. People clapped, music played, and still I stood there, frozen in a reality only I seemed to recognize. Everyone else was blind, caught up in the performance of happiness, while I was the only one who knew the play was a lie. I laughed when they laughed. I raised my glass when they toasted. I played my role so well that no one suspected the storm inside me. But every cheer felt like a knife. Every hug of congratulations felt like a cruel joke. The games began. Guessing the baby's name, cutting the cake, opening presents. Each ritual, each tradition, was supposed to be a step toward a brighter future. For me, each step felt like walking deeper into quicksand, sinking further while pretending to smile. When she unwrapped a tiny pair of shoes, the room erupted in awes and applause. She looked at me, holding them up like a prize, her eyes searching mine. And again I smiled back. My face was a mask I'd perfected, but inside I was hollow. I don't remember how long it all lasted. Hours maybe. Time blurred into a haze of laughter that wasn't mine, of photographs I never wanted to see again. When it finally ended, When the last guest had hugged her and whispered blessings, I found myself standing alone in the corner, watching her thank everyone with that same glowing smile. And all I could think was, how did we get here? How did the woman I once trusted with my life become the stranger standing before me? How did the love we built turn into this performance I was forced to endure? That day, in that room filled with joy and celebration, I realized I had never felt more alone. Because while everyone else celebrated new beginnings, I was mourning an ending I couldn't admit aloud. And as her eyes found mine one last time, as her smile curved like a blade, I knew I would carry this secret, this silence, for the rest of my life. The baby shower was supposed to mark the start of something beautiful. For everyone else, it did. For me, it was the day I buried the last pieces of the love I thought I had. When the last guest left and the laughter finally faded, the silence hit me harder than the noise ever did. The house was a mess of ribbons, crumpled wrapping paper, half-empty glasses. The wreckage of celebration. She was still glowing, still smiling as she stacked gifts neatly, humming softly under her breath. I stood in the doorway watching her, my chest heavy with words I couldn't say. I wanted to ask. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear down the illusion once and for all. But instead I swallowed it, like I had every doubt, every suspicion, every late-night fear. Because what would truth change? Would it undo the months of lies? Would it rewrite the story we had lived? Or would it simply confirm what my heart already knew? That the baby she carried wasn't mine. So I stayed silent. I played the role of the supportive partner a little longer. I smiled when she smiled, held her hand when others were watching, laughed at jokes that weren't funny. On the outside, I was still part of the picture-perfect story. On the inside, I was unraveling thread by thread. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, I drifted further from her. Not in ways anyone could see. No dramatic fights, no slammed doors, no accusations. Just a quiet retreat, piece by piece, until all that was left was the shell of who I once was. I learned something in that silence. Betrayal doesn't always come in the form of loud explosions. Sometimes it comes softly, through half smiles and whispered lies, through time. Through timelines that don't match and truths too painful to confirm. And love, real love, doesn't just vanish when trust does. It lingers like a ghost, haunting you, making you wonder if holding on a little longer could change anything. It can't. But the heart doesn't always listen to reason. Her smile that day at the shower, the smile the world saw as happiness, will forever be carved into my memory as the moment I broke. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't, because of what I didn't. Sometimes the most painful truths are the ones we never speak aloud. Sometimes silence is its own kind of confession. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever forgive, or forget, or find closure. What I do know is this. The hardest part wasn't losing her. It was losing the version of myself who once believed in her completely. And so, I carry this story not as a warning, not as revenge, but as a scar. A reminder that trust is fragile, love is complicated, and silence can be the heaviest burden of all. Because sometimes the hardest goodbye is the one you never say out loud. If this story left you with something to think about, don't forget to subscribe to Confession Multiverse. More real confessions, more untold truths, right here, waiting for you.